to help to pull from the group to clarify issues, controversial issues, and keep it clean. The Lord bless you.
Okay. All right. Welcome, sir. Welcome, Nadia.
Hi, good evening, everybody, or good night, or good morning, depending on where you are in the world.
Yeah.
It's good to be here, and I hope we have more people joining the conversation. It's a very important conversation, or two important conversations.
Hmm.
And I'm here to share and to learn to and to listen to the views of others.
Okay.
Um,
All right. So let's pray. Lord, we thank you for the beauty of unity, beauty of intellect, beauty of discussion. We pray for your presence, Lord, to rest upon this, that we may speak skillfully, and that whatever we say will turn to policy, will turn to change, even in our professional lives as principals, as teachers, as parents. We pray for a change and an understanding. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Bless you. Brother Terrell, before you start, what time you're expected to finish?
We finish in an hour and a half or less, maybe an hour, 15 minutes.
An hour is good. Okay.
All right. So, folks, I want to welcome everyone in the room and I welcome everyone online that's joining us for this. It's a pop-up discussion. It's an open discussion about two trending topics here in Jamaica. We're going to spend a few minutes on one and then another few minutes on the other. And we're going to do it parallel because I'm sure folks have opinion on both, so we can swing between both. Because I think the root issue here is the issue of the rights of children. The rights of children. All right. So we want to just set the issue in context. What are the issues? One, there is a family that um, engaged the court, or the court engaged the family, whoever it was, on an issue of the child at age 5 being allowed to enter the educational system, and the child had a challenge because of reportedly because of the hairstyle. I understand the judgment has dropped in that case. I actually have the judgment in front of me, but it's so long I can't get to analyze it and to properly read it. But I want to look beyond just that legal issue, because we're not lawyers tonight. My lawyer friends were trying to join me tonight, so hopefully one can join me. But that issue of denial of education because of a cultural slash religious expression, wherever it fell, whether she's holding to the hairstyle because of religion or culture or identity. So the issue really is not really the hairstyle or whatever. The issue is right to education and what are the barriers to that. The second issue is a issue, a statement made by a technocrat locally here in Jamaica about corporal punishment or beating of children, which seems to advocate no beating at all, no punishment by, as we know, slap on the hand, any of that stuff, no physical contact. The affirmation for that, and also from the ministry, it seemed would be to intense counseling. That's the word from one politician. Intense counseling and targeted behavioral change programs. All right, strange concepts to our grandmothers and our mothers, and for those of us who have already gotten a few whippings in our time. All right, so but I just want to just share here a little legal context to kind of frame the discussion. All right, because we want to be aware of the law and also the UN Charter of Rights. All right, the UN Charter of Rights is not legally binding, but it's predicated on international law norms, and also two, on the commitment of state governments. So it may not be legally binding, but as I say, once you give your word, that's it. So we have to honor our word as nations. All right. So just a little context. So I'm quoting from the Jamaica's Education Regulations 1980 about students and scholarships. And that section, Article 23, says a student who is being admitted to a public educational institution for the first time shall normally be admitted at the beginning of a school year, but if special circumstances so warrant, such student may be admitted at any other time. Subject to the provisions of these regulations, no person who is eligible for admission as a student to a public educational institution shall be refused admission thereto except A, on the ground that accommodation is not available in that institution, right? Or B, on any other ground approved by the minister, either generally or in any particular case. And the Education Act and the education regulations are both available on the Ministry of Justice website. So if we were to take on face value the case of the Virgos and what was reported in the media, as I said, we don't have the benefit of the written judgment. It's out, but it's so long, and I just got it, so I can't assess it. But looking at the word of the parent, right? We have to trust the word of the Virgos, what they have been through, what they were told, and the reason why. If we don't have a long judgment in front of us, obviously they have been through this. Obviously, this is their reality. So they were told about the hairstyle, right, as a ground for denial of education, that this child cannot continue except they change. So is this a breach based on these? Let me repeat, under these are the only two reasons: the accommodation not available, no space in the school, and two, any other ground approved by the minister, either generally or in particular case. So let me just drop that there. Let me just drop this here also before I bring in the guests. The UN Convention on the Rights of the Child adopted and open for signature. All right, we see the year there. All right, so just to look at it here, state parties shall respect, ensure the rights set forth in the convention, right, within their jurisdiction without discrimination of any kind, irrespective of the child or his or her parents or legal guardian, race, color, sex, language, religion, political, other opinion, national, ethnic, or social origin, property, disability, birth order status. So all measures must be taken to prevent and to protect the child against discrimination, punishment, right, on the basis of the status, activities, express opinion, belief of the child's parents, legal guardians, or family members. This is a UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. It goes on to say freedom to manifest one's religion or belief may be subject only to such limitations as are prescribed by law, which we just quoted only has two ways on which education can be denied, and are necessary to protect public safety, order, health, or morals, fundamental rights, freedom of others. We understand in the Virgo case it is alleged that the hairstyle may be conducive to lice. We have heard, that's sure how true that is, but that could not be here. Um, Also, development of respect for the child's parents is our own cultural identity. Is something we want to talk about tonight. Language, values, for the national values of the country in which the child is living. So our children have a lot of rights, and the right also the UN Convention speaks to the child not being beaten. All right, and I'm sure Nadia will speak about that. But let's talk about the hair issue first for a few minutes, and then we'll spend some time talking about corporal punishment. So Jeremy is a senior educator in the public system. I would say with school. He's a pastor, and he's my neighbor. Nadia is a international educator and recruiter and author and minister of the gospel as well. So many titles. She wear a wife, a mother, and a moving a moving lady, pun intended. She's I will tell you all her business, but she's moving on to higher heights. All right. So and the guests also for folks, you can feel free to come in anytime. Kimberly, Norma, all those who are on. Caroline, Janique, I know you're a teacher. Lynn, welcome. I believe my lovely wife is in the room also with me. So, Jeremy, what are your opinions about the first issue, the Virgo issue?
All right. When I heard the news first, I am always aware that our court system is very sensitive to our children. So I knew from day one that the court would not rule in such a favor and not hearing the detail of the course of the case. I did say to my family, I'm sure that there were rules were discussed, everything that before the parents would have entered the school, they would have known about the rules from the school gate and everything. My concern is that you do not underestimate parents in terms of sometimes they will put a story out there just for an institution to look very bad and for teachers to look bad. Also, I listened to the news tonight again, and in the copy that you have, the judge did say that the rights of a child was not ignored and it was not in breach, and the child has been going to the school ever since. Um, I mean, for a few
But
years
because
now.
of an injunction, that was an injunction that caused the child to continue the education.
All right, but bear in mind also, colleagues, that if the child has Rasta hairstyle and some amount of, I hear you said it a while ago that maybe person was saying maybe lies and all sorts of things, whatever. We don't know, but all of these things sometimes are possibilities. But all I'm saying in a nutshell, where this is concerned, is that the court is not stupid concerning our children. The court does not make those kind of decisions that are so controversial that will come again and that will rule against our children. So when we read the detail of the case, colleagues, um, the, the court really function at a high level in terms of our children and trustworthiness. Right.
Hmm. All right. So the issue now that I raised in the education regulations and the two grounds under which educational access can be denied, it's clear that something went wrong here. Somebody don't know the law.
Right.
So
Somebody don't know the law because it was not the parents who took the situation to the courts. When you're reading on it, it was a body of people, and they could not get rights because they are not legally the body to represent a child that is under age of 18. That's the responsibility of the parents.
hmm but
Right.
nevertheless, a parent is still stuck with the issue, and the issue is her child has been told that you need to adjust. The parent has been told you need to adjust in order to get full and comfortable educational benefits for your child. So take all the lobby group, Jamaicans for Justice, or whoever went to the thing. The mother is stuck with the rules of the school. So the question really is, can rules trump the law? What's your experience with them?
Is it in you have to look at the documentation. If the policy of the school and you had agreed to bury yourself with certain policies, then they are going to rule against you because you had signed and agreed to it. But I'm saying I don't think the school would say the child cannot come inside here because of Rasta hairstyle. That's not the issue. It could
Mm.
not be the issue. We are educators. That's not true. There's a deeper side to it, and anybody will tell you it can't be true. Not no go so.
But I'm saying we have to take the face value of what the mother has reported
No go so. That's not
before
true.
we get the deeper investigation. But as I said, we need to read the full statement. But in
Ask
your
Guardian. Ask
experience as an
Nadia.
educator,
I want you what Nadia is saying on it.
You know, it's so difficult to talk about it right now because I feel like there has been some clarification recently that came out, which would make sense because, like you said, Jeremy, when I read the article initially, I'm thinking something don't make sense at all. But I want to say though, I feel even if the school has a rule about hairstyles, which is a big issue for me, I don't think hairstyles should prevent a child from attending school. If it's not a safety issue,
Exactly.
if it's not a safety issue, whether it connects to the safety of the student, the safety of staff, the safety of other kids, a child should not be asked to leave school. I remember, and maybe this doesn't happen anymore, but I remember going to school in Jamaica and I was told to change my hairstyle because it was too adult. Like, what's that? and
Hmm.
and even today, teachers, and I am a teacher. I'm an educator at heart. I have to be fair and balanced. But I feel in the culture, in Jamaican culture, sometimes teachers put too much weighting on some punitive issues, like a hairstyle. The hair is too long. But how does that endanger the life of any other child in the school or staff? How does it prevent learning from taking place? So this issue, I am waiting for more to come out about it. I don't feel like that's in the entirety. Like Jeremy said, something is missing because I can't see a court going against so many laws and to decide that a child cannot go to school or because they're wearing locks. Something just don't add up.
Hmm.
if
But
if it comes out that that is the case, that the school is saying just because this student is wearing locks then they can't be in school, then that's a major problem.
yeah, um,
Um, but
yes,
but
go
Joel,
ahead.
I just want to add in. I hear when Nadia say a hairstyle should not be the
Mm-mm.
main factor for putting out a child out of school. I'm saying in my experience, every January morning when you go back to school, you really have to call the students back or their parents to say, remind mommy or daddy that the hairstyle is too elaborate because when the boys or the girls come back January after the Christmas hairstyle, they will use the entire day or your teaching session is distracted. They want to pull each other in the hair, whether it's some colors in there or the boys have the carvings in there, and it distracts and it will distract your lesson. I'm not saying that it is
Jeremy.
no,
The
But
hairstyle distracts your lesson.
but
Ho, Jeremy.
because the other students get caught up in what they see. 10 students, 10 boys in your class come with their hair carved out and you're doing mathematics. They use a pencil and they're trying it in other people here and they draw this and whatever. But sometimes it is for order and for particular structure. And
okay,
primary
so
school teachers will tell you that it's a possibility that sometimes these elaborate hairstyles really distract other children because they want to play and they come and they drag each other in the hair and they lick each other and that type of thing.
but Jeremy, I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm really sorry to say I I don't see it as an issue. The issue is not the hairstyle. The issue is classroom management. I'm
Exactly.
sorry. The issue is the type of mindset that we foster in the students themselves. And I'm not saying this is easy, but I feel like it's huge. It's a cultural thing. I've taught in places where kids come with their hair well red, pink, blue, all sort of ornaments, but nobody takes notice because it's cultural. You're free to wear whatever
Cultural.
hairstyle you want to wear. But I do feel though, in Jamaica, and even until today, when I talk to like principals and talk to colleagues who, are still actively working in the system, they make these issues to be huge, and they're not. I do understand that they can be distractions, but I feel that if you set the tone of the expectations in your classroom and you're consistent and there's high expectations, I do feel like over time, not immediately, but over time, I feel like the attention will move away from the hairstyle and more look on the what they're learning. But really, in this time in the 21st century, for us to be making a lavish looking hairstyle such a concern, I definitely think trust me, I used to think that way. I used to think that way, but having been to different countries and teach in systems where kids wear whatever they want to wear, they wear to this. And not that I agree with these hairstyles or whatever, but I'm thinking, how is it affecting the child's learning if there's a classroom that is well managed and mindset that is focused on learning?
Mm. But the deeper question is, I'm asking again, both of your educators and the guests can answer. At what point does rules trump the law? So, Jeremy, in your
Ooh,
I read the act, the regulations. Only two reasons can be given for denial of a child to school. So,
Sir,
so
and
how
media,
come?
look here,
Just take it away from hairstyle. Any rule at all that's developed by the school, how is it that it can
look
go
here.
above the law?
We teach our children, we teach our children
Yeah.
in terms of education, culture. Culture affects everything in life.
mhm,
Hmm.
And we need to understand that we know we teach our children that some things is out of our culture, especially what we eat or music, whatever. So we need to understand to understand and being globally aware in our Jamaican context. We are moving, but some things is just not yet readily
mhm.
accepted in our culture because of our history and how we are socialized.
Yeah, I agree
Okay.
with that. Yes, I
So,
totally
so
agree with
Nadia,
that. Yes.
so for a 10-year-old or 7-year-old child should come into a Jamaican class with a green hair and pink hair, understand culturally, it throw us off. And,
I
and, and not because it's a wrong or right thing. It's just that we don't use to it. So it can become offensive, not in terms of being aggressive, but it will give a challenge to accept.
But I understand that. But as educators worldwide now look at what we call equity, we're talking about the fact that if a child comes from a background where their parents are the dancehall type, the type who wear colored hair, and in
Yeah.
their mind and in their lifestyle, that is a okay here. This child now is being affected by the parents' decision. This child coming into school, this child's hairstyle really should not make the child, any less accepted than anybody else. What really probably needs to change is the perception of the teachers, because I know a lot of teachers see some hairstyle immediately. Oh my goodness, this one, where this one come from, and the whole mindset about that. I'm going to give you an example. I don't know how many of you know the do rags. I'm not sure if you call that in
Yes.
Jamaica.
Yes.
This piece
Yes.
of
Yes.
cloth,
The
right?
the
For
satin
a
thing.
long time within school boards here in Canada, a lot of schools were saying, and the boards or the different divisions, they were saying students should not wear do-rags. It's not appropriate. Right now, that we have moved away from that. Number one, does the do-rag covers the student face that you cannot see them if they're committing some offense within the school? Is it a safety concern? Does it put any other child at risk of being hurt? Does it put the teacher at risk of being hurt? No. So this is the rule. A child cannot be sent home just because they're wearing a do-rag. Moreover, there are some kids who wear it for cultural reasons. Again, not that my son is going to ever wear it, nor that
Mm-hmm.
I agree. But
Mm-hmm.
as an educator who is in leadership in a school, I can't see a child come up because and they're wearing a do-rag and I immediately have my preconceived notion that this child is X and so they need to go home. It doesn't make sense. How is this child affecting the smooth running of the classroom? How is this child affecting, the health, the well-being and safety of anybody in the school? So again, it really comes back to our perception and how we manage these things. We have to really become more global minded in our thinking. And I agree with you, Jeremy. It's gonna take time because within the Jamaican context, in isolation, we're very rigid on certain expectations. But we are preparing students for global, opportunities. They're gonna
Mm-hmm.
leave Jamaica most likely at some point. They're
Mm-hmm.
gonna go to university. They're gonna interact with different people. So, but if we talk from a Christian perspective, that's different.
Mm-hmm.
We have
Yeah,
certain
yeah.
expectations.
I think that's where the rubber meets the road. I think
Right.
we're so influenced by, well, Christianity has influenced culture and law. We know
Yeah.
that. So a lot of the philosophies we have are grounded on that, and we're gonna get down into the beating because I know Nada is riled up about that one. That's Christian based. But folks want to say something. Janice Brown, come on in the
Yeah.
room. I need somebody to answer my question tonight as well. At some
Sir,
point, when does rules trump the law? Go ahead,
good,
Janice.
good
Janice is
night,
an
everyone.
educator. Yes, years of experience in the system. Go ahead, Janice.
Yes, I was thinking, I agreed about culture and everything that transform and change our school system. Yes. No, I think the button stop with the Ministry of Education. I know that every school year or every school has a policy, rules that govern the school, the board, and everybody sit down, come up with some kind of rules. Now, these rules, the Ministry of Education know about the rules of the school and the policies of the school. So the buck stop with the Ministry of Education. No, I teach at a school that you cannot, the girls cannot wear long hearing. They have to wear earrings. They have to wear the knobs. They cannot wear big hairstyles because, as Jeremy said, in our school, it's a distraction. So they
Hmm.
don't allow it. And a lot of things, you understand? But I do agree that you cannot just see a Rasta child come to school and you turn him outside of the school and say,
Yeah, because that's a clear breach of religious
that,
right.
that
But I'm
definite,
moving beyond
definite.
religion now. I'm just dealing with cultural
I'm not
identity
talking about religion,
and
sir. I'm talking
yeah.
about just the policy. Because I've been there. We have Rasta children come to school. Rasta boys go to Woolmer's High School. Rasta boys go to Mona Primary, and they're not turned away from the school. So as Jeremy was saying, it must go be as something else between the parents and the principal of that school where it reached so far.
All
You
right, but
cannot turn around.
Janice, I want us to examine the issue. Remember, all right. First, we heard in the media that the dreadlock was not for a religious reason. It may turn out to be so, because as I said, there's a written judgment and I need to read it. But I just want to look beyond this case. I'm just looking at the principle of the thing. I'm saying if somebody walks into a school and say, I have a dreadlock hairstyle, not because I'm a Rasta, but because it's my family identity. This is
Tradition.
what we like, and this is how we express ourselves, and this is a Jamaican thing, and whatever. It's not a religious thing. Does a
Right.
school have the right to refuse education to the child
Mm-mm.
because of a
No, no.
cultural expression?
No, the school don't have the right to do that. But there are some policies. I know that for sure that the parents must have to come to the school, learn the policies of the school. The principal will make a outline everything about the school,
Hmm.
and there from there you work together. Yes, but I don't think that one should turn out a child out of school because of the dreadlock hairstyle. I don't know. I just don't
Um,
believe that. Yes,
Sister
Jeremy.
Sister Janice, brother Turley, every institution and
Yeah, about
every country have some form
policies.
of
Yeah.
rules and
Yep.
cultural norms. It's
Hmm.
like
Mhm.
in the church. It's like in the church.
Mm-hmm.
and abroad, most Jamaican apostolic church said natural hair and long skirt. And the modern church now, and especially the churches overseas, say you can wear no hat and wear your pants and whatever. But does it mean that that they are not serving God? No, it's just that there are cultural differences with
Definitely.
among people.
Yeah.
So so some families have some practices that it is not socially accepted because of culture. Because you have some families, the boys may not want to wear shirt in the yard or in the house, but when they are coming school, they must put on something to cover up their chest area. So you want to tell me, colleagues, that my two sons don't wear shirt at home because I believe they should not. So when I'm taking them to school tomorrow morning, they should go without their shirt and sit down in
No,
the
no, no.
classroom.
There are policies that you have to obey the rules
No,
of the
well, I
school.
go back to law on that because the law, the education regulations, and I believe every person before they die should read all the laws of a country. I'm going to try and read up as much as law of the law. The law speaks to public health as a reason for denying education or governing education. So you could always resort to that. But I'm still having a challenge with school policies because in the Kensington case, it seemed as if the principal had a strong passion or a bias or prejudice
Passion.
against something and went beyond a board and went beyond people and just decide to project that belief. So the question is, in your experience, Janice and Jeremy, have you seen children refused in the educational system,
No.
Um,
refused learning, or been taken out of the system because they refuse to comply with the policies of the school?
Well, I am.
Sir,
Yes.
remember how I started?
Mm-hmm.
I
Hello.
started first to say it is beyond the Rasta hairstyle.
Mm-hmm.
People,
Definitely.
principals are educators. You have the coordinators for the grade. You have the guidance counselors. You have these other stakeholders. It is not when you look at at the issue, there is no person in the school, chairman and principal and teachers. The average teacher in our school has a degree and a master's. People are bright people. Nobody would think and say it's because of the child hairstyle. It is not that.
Definitely. It
But
is not. It is
but
Sitting
can
here.
not.
I just but can I just say I remember going to school in Jamaica and um I was asked to participate in activities that would be a punishment for things that I did not do. I was personally responsible for what happened, but the
Mhm.
teacher at that time gave um, the whole class punishment. And at that time, I stood up and I made it very clear I am not doing the
Doing
punishment.
it.
So
Okay.
what I'm trying to get at, I feel like, and it still exists in Jamaica,
No, it
some
doesn't.
teachers, yeah, in some places it does. But anyway, honestly, I'm talking from what I've heard. It may not be as widespread as it was before, which I doubt it is. But there are times when some teachers can have grudges. There are some teachers who have personal biases against some kids,
That's right.
and
That's
their
true.
actions sometimes go further. It goes further than really necessary. Sometimes some principals follow the thinking of the teachers and take things that don't really need to go as far. But in this particular case, I'm not sure. Going back to what
Okay.
Anil says, the rules within school shouldn't trump the law. No, you can't have rules because any teacher or any principal can decide based on their personal biases, this is what I want to do, and it affects children, but that's what they like. How is that
Oh,
fair?
no, but Nadia, I want to tell you this. So it's, yes, for the past 10 years and
Yes.
up to the last 2, 3 years, our Jamaican education system is more leaning
Mm-hmm.
to
Definitely.
the children more
For the
than any
children,
other.
yes. Student
Yeah,
centered,
we
yes.
have changed so much our school culture, our learning techniques.
Everything.
and how we behave as teachers now. It come like say we are in an American society because our parents and children basically run school. In our time, the teacher run school and principal. No, which it has changed a whole lot.
I
Right now,
Yes,
agree.
Jeremy.
all of us
Yes.
have to be on our P's and our Q's. It's like we are walking on eggshell and
Which
chalk
should
line.
be so. That's
I
I
accountability.
agree
well,
with the changes. I do
Um,
acknowledge that there are changes. I've seen it. But what I'm saying, there are some cases, and even though there are changes, the culture is hard to break away from. The thinking, this thinking that this should be a normal hairstyle and so forth.
all right.
I
Foster wants to make a point. Foster. Okay, welcome, Lady Alicia Dunkley Willis, hot off the press. We soon come to you. She will lend some context to this discussion, critical context. Foster, I saw you with your hand up.
Pleasant good night, everyone.
I
good
bless you.
night.
Just to give some context, I'm Chandris Foster,
Oh,
CEO of
Chandris.
G-Weed Cosmetics
Yes, yes.
and former student at the University of the West Indies, where I pursued a bachelor's in marketing. Just to add to the conversation, I want to be bold tonight, and I want to be presumptuous by saying that I think Jamaica is still holding on to some of the quote unquote Baka master days, and we need to fast forward ourselves to see just what is happening. There's a great disparity between this generation and the former generation what they call it Z, millennials, and generation X and Y. What is happening is that people are doing things differently, and while in this case the in the context of the hairstyle, and it is debatable, whether or not it was a religious reason or just plain discrimination against the child. What I do think is that we need to just master what it is that's the objective. What was the objective trying to be achieved? What was the high court in ruling a favor of the child's rights not being breached? What was the real objective there? And what I dare to say is that this is stemming, just to add what my dear had said, this is stemming not only from some personal bias, perhaps on the teacher's side, but societal bias. Because I dare to say that a browner skinned child with a much couth, quote unquote, and well combed hair would not have the same issue as this 5-year-old child. And to make the premise that for health reasons the child here needs to be cut, in my estimation, is plain right discriminatory. And I too myself have been a victim of that going through high school. I used to attend the Excelsior High School, and I have at the time going to school, I had natural hair, what them call quote unquote dry and picky, right? And there would be some times when I am wearing an afro or I'm wearing a puff, and the teachers would dare interject to say the puff is not appropriate, and they used to hunt down persons wearing puffs and implement a lot of punishments. Similarly, if another student of a much different textured hair was out, they would not come under the same repercussions we did. So I beg to say that it is stemming from our societal bias, towards certain things, because right now a lot of persons are not wearing locks as a religious personal engagement. They're wearing it as a lifestyle, as Minister Terrell said. They're wearing it as a way of life, something that is a part of them, and something that is a natural hairstyle. Just as I would wear a cream hair, or I would wear my hair natural and out, they're wearing this Rasta hairstyle as a norm. And we have not yet come to accept that, and I think that is where the disparity lies.
Yeah. Thank you, Chandris. Just to give a disclaimer, Chandris is joining me again on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. I'm bringing in some other natural hair experts who have also developed products. Chandris has co-invented a product for the natural hair. It's working wonders using the guinea hen weed. So join me, everybody, on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. I'm going to send out the note. Natural hair miracle cures and miracle approaches. You're going to see live pictures and all of that. And Chandri is going to talk more. But powerful points you made, Chandris. We want to put
I
that on
want
the
to say
whiteboard.
something to Sandra.
Aldine wants to come in. Aldine,
Okay, good night,
before
everyone.
Alicia comes in. Yes. Good night,
Okay,
sir.
so I've taught before. I'm
Aldine, straight out
currently
of Canada.
yeah. I've taught at the primary level and the university level, and I've had varied experiences. The thing is that I think you've been asking the question, does a rule trump or usurp a law? And I
Yeah.
think the problem that the Jamaican system has is that we tend not to understand that whatever rule that a teacher comes up with, because when I was teaching, I had my own rules. Like nobody could come and tell me what to do. It's my classroom, it's my space. But whatever I did, I ensured that it was operating within a certain bigger parameter, like the law. I mean, I should not be endangering anyone. And even some of my rules are draconian, but at the end of the day,
Give us
there
an
shouldn't be any.
example.
All right, so I was teaching at a very prominent high school in Jamaica, and I think I don't want to say the name,
No, man, it's okay.
but Pastor Jeremy mentioned something about. Hold on. He mentioned something about the school switching, and it's more on the parents and the students. They're the ones running the schools. It's no longer teachers who are protecting their space and doing what they should do to ensure that the student learns. I found that to be very true in the school where I was teaching. Like students and parents, they ruled. And so one of my rules is that it's basic. If you have something to say, you should raise your hand. I taught at a school where students were very vocal, like they say anything that they want to say. And I know one of the school rules is that you should not tell the student to leave the classroom. And a student was very disrespectful. And I reprimanded that student, and I told the student, I was very angry. And I told the student to go and stand at the door. Do not step outside, because I knew at that moment, if I had told the student to leave the classroom, then I could have, gotten into trouble. Mm-hmm. And so as teachers, we need to understand that we must know our boundaries. And I think there should be more workshops, more that is going into educating teachers and being, fair and equitable, and not being, discriminatory against a particular student, whether they want to be a Rastafarian, a Christian, or whatever. Teachers need to remember they operate in a certain law. If not, their biases will come into play so easily. And we all have our cultural,
not just your biases, but your moods for the day. The way your husband or your wife treat you for the morning.
Definitely. And so at the end of the day, I question, was it a rule that, really trumped, the law of, protecting the student, and you should not leave the school because of your hair. And so, as you said, I think we need to really read between the lines when the document is released, because right now, at this moment, it's a lot of hullabaloo. Everybody is just, talking what they want to talk. And we really need to get to the place where we need to understand that teachers have rights too, and they should be free to make the rules. It just needs to operate within the law, within a bigger framework. And that is very important. And that's the only way somebody in Canada, for example, I teach in Canada right now, and I see some bikinis coming in my classroom, and
bikini?
Yes,
what?
Especially during the summer, and some short shorts. And I'm saying, at the end, I can't tell you I'm a Christian. I don't want you to, to blind my eyes or anything. I think you're revealing too much. I just have to continue teaching. And this is tertiary. I just had to continue teaching. At the end of the day, they can report me that I'm being discriminatory, or if somebody is homosexual in the classroom and they're taking over a class, I have to address the issue that they're being rude and not that they're homosexuals. And so that's how it is. There's a broader framework in which we must operate. That's what I have to say.
Bikini in the schoolroom.
Brother Cheryl?
Yeah, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not. Maybe
Uh,
it's not the beginning itself, but the
Cheryl,
clause,
Yes,
the
Cheryl.
clause
yes.
itself, it could
1 minute,
pass.
1 minute, Janice. Go ahead, Aldine. Finish up.
No, I'm saying the clause itself could pass. Like people
Okay.
walk shirtless over here. It's
Yes,
crazy.
yes, yes, yes. Okay, Janice, fill up your
Yeah,
point. Finish
I
your point,
think,
and Alicia
yeah,
coming in.
yes, just one. I want to say one thing. We watch a movie called Freedom Writers. I don't know if anybody watched that movie.
Mhm.
It's about children. They were so rude and out of order, out of place. But the teacher couldn't run them out of the classroom. She had to allow them to stay. And in the end, they became professional writers. It's a wonderful move for all teachers to watch.
Mhm.
Freedom Writers.
It's based on a real life story.
Absolutely. That's a
Yes, it
great
is.
film.
A
Okay,
very
okay.
great movie.
Freedom Writers. Maybe we'll have movie evening on Heart to Heart. Any bad word in there?
No.
All right. So thank you, Janice. I have Lady Alicia Dunkley Willis. I won't say much about uh, her. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but because we're streaming publicly, but she's able to lend some context to this in her personal perspective. That's how I'm bringing her on, her personal perspective, in terms of her insight of the judgment that just landed. So, Alicia Willis, what would you say from your personal perspective about this whole situation before we move on to beating?
All right, blessings, everyone. So I wasn't privy to most of what was said before, and so I'm at a slight disadvantage, I would think.
All right, just
But
to recap, we're just discussing the issue that happened, the Virgo case, and we want
right,
to. My question is: can rules trump the law in the
okay,
context of the Education Regulations
right,
1980 that says
right,
only two reasons can be denied education: one,
and
no space in the school, and two, the minister must determine that this child, you know,
right,
so I'm putting it on the screen there. The ground that
okay,
accommodation is not available
uh-huh,
in that institution, and B, on any other ground approved by the minister, either generally or in any particular case. And I'm sure this didn't reach, well, I'm assuming this didn't reach up to that level. So
okay.
can a board trump the minister before he makes a decision?
All right, so I'm not a lawyer, first off, but I've been covering the courts for a little and Parliament for a little. As it relates to the judgment that was handed down today, well, the written ruling was released today, but the judgment was handed down from Friday. And basically, what the court decided, it was a panel of 3 judges, which is considered a full court. And basically, what they decided was that the policy that the school has, which is no braids, no beads, no locks. So it's not just about locks, it was also about braids and beads, that that policy did not violate the constitutional right of the 7-year-old in question. Furthermore, they were saying that the decision, a personal, one moment, please.
Okay, so we're getting some live breaking news update and context to the written judgment, or written, what you call it, written, what's the correct term?
Ruling,
Written
the written
ruling.
ruling, this right.
Yes.
So the oral judgment would have been given on Friday. So this is it in writing with all the arguments considered, meaning the arguments of lawyers on both sides, and then the judges or judge addressing each point raised on a point by point basis, and also considering the laws which the lawyers use, so they call them authorities. So the
Mhm.
lawyer will present, say, a case that was similar to what is now being adjudicated on, that was done in the 1970s. And we said, based on this case and based on what happened in that case, or what are the facts of this case, which is similar to this case, this is what that judge decided, and we think that this court should also decide or follow
Precedence. Yeah,
the line of
precedence.
jurisprudence or whatever the word is. So all of that was done, and now the judges gave their blow by blow recount of that, and then they stated their decision and their decision as it relates to the different points that were being posed by the lawyers for the claimants. So there were several points under the Constitution that they were saying was breached by the school as it relates to the child. And essentially what the court says is that the policy that the school has does not violate the constitutional rights of the child. And those rights, they looked at several rights in terms of the religious rights and so on. So one of the arguments proposed by one of the lawyers, Isaac Buchanan, was that she was being denied her freedom of religious expression. But the judges pointed out that at no point did the parents say to the school that the hairstyle worn by the child was linked to a faith of any kind.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
certainly
That's
not
true.
the Rastafarian faith. Later on, I think during the court proceedings, it was said that it was because they had taken some Nazarite vow, and as a result of that, they were maintaining the hairstyle for each member of their family. Now, that the court said was not stated upfront to the school, so the school really had no, the lawyer couldn't say that the child's freedom to religious expression was being denied because that wasn't put forward to the school, and it's not the school's responsibility to find out what do you believe or what don't you believe. It's a parent's belief. It's the parent's right to say, I do not want my child to participate in devotion because we don't subscribe to this or that or so on. And also they said that the mother had indicated to the principal that the hair was just a style. So at that point, nothing of religious anything was mentioned. So they're saying that a decision as to a choice of personal expression taken by a child and their family cannot be imposed on a school in contravention of school rule and policy. So basically the school rule trumps your personal preference. And essentially one other point that they made was that if it is that you are so in conflict with what the school policy says, then you have all right to take your child elsewhere to other schools that do not have a similar rule. You made a question as to whether rules trump the law or whether a policy can trump the law. Well, that's one point that the judges said that the lawyer did not prove. So it's up to the
Yeah,
lawyer. The lawyer
but
has responsibility to bring the case on behalf of whomever he or she is representing, and the lawyer did not. In
so let's
fact,
blame the lawyer.
no, I wouldn't say blame the lawyer. That's just one. But in another instance, as it relates to where his defense for religious freedom was considered, they said that he erred in his interpretation of the law where that's concerned. He misinterpreted clearly, and they made the point more than once that, listen, we're not saying Rastafarians shouldn't be allowed to go to school. We're not saying locks are not allowed to be in school, and that's allowed because they pointed to the fact that a number of schools do allow children who have locks because they subscribe to Rastafarian beliefs to be in school, but they're simply saying that in this case, that case was not proven. So essentially, they're saying rules are rules, and we cannot, and they made a point which I agree with. If it is that we're going to say every personal decision that a family makes, so I say, all right, fine, your school says wear pleated uniforms. I don't want my child wearing no pleated uniform. I want her wearing a shift. So because that's my personal, I subscribe to that, and that's a very flimsy I would say example. But just to say for example that I don't want my child wearing a pleated skirt. I want her to wear an A-line skirt, no pleats. Should the school bend its policy for every parent who comes and says, this is my personal preference and this is my family's belief? It would descend into chaos and disorder. At no point was it ever said that this child was subject to classism or racism. if it had happened, I guarantee would have come out in court, and it did not. And I'm sure that attorney would lose no time in bringing that to the attention of the court. What I think stands out is that even though they said this is our policy and so, that child was still allowed to be at school up to whenever.
No, 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 no. The
So
only reason the child continued in school because there was an injunction.
the injunction and yes, the child
So there was a
remains in school
denial of the
because of the
right of
injunction
the
that
child to
prevented them
education.
from removing the child from the school. But at the same
Exactly.
time, the parent says that the student has performed consistently well in whichever grades that she has matriculated since then. So that would intimate to me that she is fairly comfortable in terms of being able to achieve her educational best, if you want to put it like
Well,
that.
it's a child.
So
They're
even
resilient.
though, sorry,
No, I'm saying it's a child. The
oh,
child
a
is
resilient
resilient.
child. Oh yes, but if the most resilient of child in a hostile environment will not be able to maintain. I'm putting that forward. The
Yeah, but the
most
child was
resilient
isolated
child
from
that
the
is in
philosophical
an
issues.
environment where they are openly discriminated against and openly sidelined and treated badly
No,
and
no, no,
all of
no,
that
no. Alicia,
would not.
the
I don't believe that child would do well.
this child was isolated from all the legal, cultural, philosophical wranglings. The child continued in the educational system while
Yes,
the
but the
parents and
adults
the
there are
lawyers.
very well aware, and I don't believe that those adults would are so gifted so as to hide their true feelings.
Alicia,
But I think the impact that it would have had on an older child, it didn't have on this younger child, because this child was somehow cushioned from all of that because of the
5 years
age.
old.
If it
Exactly.
was an older child, then the effects, the negative effects would have been more profound. So it's hard to compare the two. But as I mentioned before, I feel like more will come out. I don't think I have enough information. I feel something doesn't make sense.
Yes.
Something is missing, because a court could not just decide that a child cannot go to school because they're Rastafarian, or whether move the religion of Rastafarianism out of the way. They would not deny a child to go to school just because they have locks, because that doesn't make sense. If that is the case, then we need to dig and look at the remnants of slavery that has been left within our legal system, and it's true.
I know you're going there. But team, Alicia,
Serial.
this is like a rock right here. Nobody can get beyond what I'm showing right here. This is the law. There are only two reasons for denying a child education.
Right.
And none of those reasons was mentioned. If there wasn't
In
an
terms of
injunction,
denying
the child would have been discontinued from the school.
Hold on one moment.
Yes.
The court says they were all right. So what can I? This is a quote.
Yeah.
Furthermore, what is discernible from this interaction is that the claimant's mother or parents throughout this interaction did not inform the school that their daughter had locked hair for religious purposes, and it is evident that the hairstyle the child was wearing was not easily identified as such. This view is supported by the information in the affidavit the current principal gave. She says that during orientation, the child's hairstyle was identified as sister locks, and this mother had pointed out that her hair was just a style. The judge says, I find that the policy of the school did not breach the child's right to education. The child does not have a right to attend a particular institution, and as such, Kensington Primary can reject the child as
No,
a
no, no,
student.
no.
This
That's
does not
wrong.
affect her right to
That's
education,
illegal.
as she could always find another school that supports her form of expression.
No.
So let me ask something. What was the
Yes.
reason? Because this lice business keep coming up. What is the exact reason for the
Right.
child being refused her continuation in school? What is the core? What did the
Okay,
child
so
do?
the child didn't do anything. As a matter of fact, they had not met the child until orientation. Prior to that, their interaction had been with the parents, and based if I were to, I don't have that before me right now, but upon meeting the child, the expression to the parent was that, this hairstyle has been an issue for us in the past because we've had cases where students had this hairstyle, it was not properly maintained, and because of that, there was an infestation of lice. And
But
there's another word which is used, which is jonjo. That was a word that was used in the document. And I'm figuring that that means some scalp issue or something of the sort. So
but
apparently they were saying that because of hygiene reasons, we do not we do not, what you would say, allow this kind of hairstyle.
but but
So
but
that
but
was where it
Alicia,
all started, or
that
that
is
was what led
crazy.
to that.
But if that's the case, that is crazy. Number one, they've
Mhm.
used their past experiences with other children to determine from the outset that this child now will most likely have those sort of issues even without the child starting school. So that's a problem, because if that was my child, I would have a big problem. That could be said of anything else. It could be the way the child dresses. It could be anything else. And they could use this idea that, okay, in the last number of years, we've seen this situation. And so we're using those experiences to determine. Why can't they assume that each family should be taken, each child should be admitted on their own merit, and see how this parent, manages this sort of hairstyle? That is discriminatory. To me,
Hmm.
that's discriminatory from the
And
outset
illegal, because
and making
Alicia
a
just made
determination.
Alicia
No.
Alicia made a point about the parent having the right, yes, to move the child to any school.
Yes.
But Alicia, here's the law. He says
Um,
no.
and I'm
Kensington
simply recounting.
is not
I'm
a
just in a
private
sincere.
zinc fence school. It's a
I'm just
public school
recounting.
But
I am
owned
just in
by
a
the
sincere.
I,
government.
I'm just recounting what the
We
court
know,
decided.
we know,
But
but
again, I say it
I'm
was
getting
up to
very
the
answerable.
lawyer.
No,
yeah, you know
this
It
what?
is
was up to
It's
the
illegal.
lawyer
It's a
to make the
public
case.
educational institution. It's not a private school. So they
It was
cannot
up
tell
to
a
the
parent
lawyers to
that
make the case.
they have the right to move the
and
a
child.
that's true,
school with
Alicia. It's up
standard,
to the lawyers, yeah.
a school with standard.
What do you mean a
What does that
school with
mean? Yeah,
standard?
yeah.
All right, Kensington is known to be a model school. In the public
Not with
school,
equity and inclusion,
It's
clearly.
I am
owned
telling you
by the government, paid
what
by
I
my
know
tax
about
money,
Ken,
my
what I
tax
know about
supported.
what I know about Kensington is a model school, and
Uh-huh.
they have certain standard that they
Yes.
want to uphold, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they will
Within
not
the
hold up
public law,
within the public. Yeah, yeah,
not personal law.
yes, within the
Exactly.
public law.
Yeah, but that's the problem. How can we call an institution that is discriminating on a child who they had no interaction with? They've never had the kid in the school. They've never seen that the child's hair is unkept, or it's posing any problem to any other children, or they've determined just from past experiences that your hairstyle is not coming here. Your type of hair, that's a problem. That
Yeah,
that in
but
itself.
Nadia,
But
experience teaches wisdom.
No, but that's
Yes.
discrimination at the
Jeremy, your
same
lice is
time.
not my lice. My lice might be
no.
small and harmless.
Mm-mm.
But
Eh?
look at
Not
this.
all lice are equal.
Let me extend the argument, because there are some employers who don't like to employ um, Christians, especially apostolic or Pentecostal Christians, because some of us have been known to be fasting and praying and taking our paid time, or your employer's paid time, to do those sort of activities. Now, I show up at for an interview, and this person finds out that I'm apostolic, and they're going to say, you know what, based on our history hiring people like you who shares your religion, it tells me that you as an individual is going to follow that same trend. That could not stand up with a good lawyer fighting it. That doesn't make sense. It's discrimination. There's no way.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting. I feel like more is going to come out of this. And I feel like we should wait. And then,
No, no, we don't have to wait. I'm going to send you the judgment right now on WhatsApp, Nadia.
no, I
So we don't have
know.
to wait.
I'm
It's
aware of
60
it, but I
pages.
feel, but there's more. There is more to
But
it.
I think it begs the question of, what do we want our children to model? Because if you're going to have a school that assumes from the onset that because you have this type of hair texture, you're more prone to lice, then how do they treat somebody else that they see outside of their school? They're gonna assume that this person is a dirty Rasta because that
Yes.
is the overall picture of
Yes.
Rastafarians.
Not all
And
lies are equal.
I just I just don't get it, because you can have a student who just has poor hygiene and is just not fit for the classroom. What do? Kick them out? No. You call their parents, you have a conversation, you need to fix this issue.
And
You
you
need to
spray
use
with
deodorant.
Lysol. Mm.
So I think moving away from the fact that the ruling was already made, I think the
Yeah.
school rules are questionable.
Mm.
It's
Something all right.
breeding discrimination. Something is not
Yes.
right.
All right. We have
And
to move on to beating. Thank you, Aldine. Alyssa, was there anything else? I know I'm all over, I'm antsy, stirring up my passions here. Anything else to add in that 60-page judgment?
Not really. I was just looking at the declaration that the family sought to have the court make, and I'm just saying that I don't think the judges made their decision out of they could not have made their decision out of their personal, if they have any personal biases or because of a personal bias. They
I
had to
agree.
look at the case that was presented to them and
Correct.
assess the soundness of the case and the points that were raised and they had to
Law.
assess it against the law.
I
And if
agree.
it is and they cannot rule outside of the law because it's going to be challenged if it is that the rule, if and even if it's not, even if
Yeah,
they didn't
but
even if they ruled outside of the law, the parents still have the right to appeal,
but there's a reason why
but
they're called judges. You know
yes,
what a judge is?
absolutely. But
You're
I'm
supposed to make
just
a
saying, I just
judgment.
want all of us to read the judgment, read the points that were raised by the attorneys, read the points that were raised counter to by the
Yeah.
judges, and see how they arrived at
Yeah, I need to
their
read it because I question whether they read the Education Regulations 1980.
I'm sure they had to
23,
because there was a
clause
lawyer there. The Ministry
23.
of Education was represented. The Ministry
No,
of Education was represented.
I don't think they read.
The Office of
They
the
read it.
Children's Advocate was
I
represented.
don't think they read. You know what I mean? Nothing to me. I don't think people read it
They
because
had
the law
to.
is
They
clear.
had to. These are senior judges.
Was it quoted
There's
in the
no that
judgment?
amount to
In the
malpractice.
Was it quoted?
Probably it
If it
was
was quoted,
revised.
no, it wasn't revised. It needs to be revised, but it wasn't because even in those
Of
laws,
Education had a
the
lawyer. It
education
had a
laws,
lawyer there.
the
The
education
Office
law
of the
has some
Children's
fees in there
Advocate
for
had a lawyer.
$4, right? Chargeable to parents and teachers and abusers of the law, $4. Anyway, we have to move
Anyway,
on. Janique, you get the last word before we move to beating.
All right, good night, everybody. All right,
Good
so
night.
I haven't read the rulings yet, but I too have my take on it. I think what is happening with Kensington is a clear example of abuse of power. Now, it goes to show the inequalities in our system where some school operate as private entities using public funds.
My God.
Leading you into that point about beating, we need to be reminded of who and what Kensington is known for. Yes, it's one of the premier schools in St. Catherine, but under that particular leadership, Kensington was that school back in 2012 that called out for beating, that was called out for beating children, not only to discipline them, but for getting grades deemed to be below par. I'm reading here. A parent claimed that her daughter got 52 out of 60, which is equated to 87% in a test, and was lined up with other classmates that did not meet the so-called target, and taken to that same principal who used a ruler to beat them on their hands for failing grades. after which a probe was launched by the Ministry of Health, and the school agreed to cease the practice. So it's as everybody's basically saying, this goes deep. And for me, it's a clear abuse of power.
Thank you, Jan. Perfect segue into beating. To beat or not to beat. There are two levels to it. There is the educational system and there is the home. I'm not sure of the laws as it pertains to the homes. It's corporal punishment in Jamaica. I need to update myself. If anybody has any input on that, let me know. But I want to locate the discussion in the educational system. The government has taken a very clear position on it that this should stop, and that what should be replaced with it is intense counseling, quoting the minister, certain minister, intense counseling and behavioral change program. What are your perspectives on this corporal punishment, to beat or not to beat? Nadia has some very interesting perspectives on the historicity of beating, where it comes from and why it should stop. So Nadia.
Excuse me, Ture. Have you seen my point? I sent you a message.
Okay, no, I haven't seen.
I have to go on another meeting.
Oh, you have to go. Okay, thank you, Jeremy,
Yeah.
for your powerful input
Maybe
into this
maybe Jeremy
discussion.
should share before he goes on the beating.
Oh, oh, oh,
If he has the time, you have the time.
yes, I can. Yes, in just a minute or two.
Yes, my journalist Alicia has to go as well. Okay, Alicia. All right.
As for the beating in schools, I'm not in for beating because I was a very good child and I got some slap and
Really, Jeremy.
I mean, I would have preferred the
Jeremy.
teacher. Janique, I would have preferred the teacher had spoken to me and tell me the consequences, what could have happened if I continue to behave like that. And so I think I was more receptive of a verbal reprimanding than the physical beating. But my personal view on it, I have to agree with the Ministry of Education as an employer too, that the beating in schools can be abusive. However, a part of me still hold that everything must be done in balance and in moderation. However, for the beating where that is concerned, leave that up for parents to do a little spanking, but not for teachers. Yeah. So that's my view. Parents, but not for teachers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you for
All
your
right.
input. Before Nadia begins, let me acknowledge my audience on the wider social media. Tisha, welcome. She's agreeing with Janice. Dixie Bell, welcome. Olivia Carter, straight out of Japan. She's an educator as well. I'd like to know if you beat those Japanese children, Olivia. They come, they're very skilled at martial arts. She says what the school should have looked at was the child's living situation. Why did the child's hair develop lice? Purportedly, we're saying, right? Maybe the child's family could not afford the basic necessities. I highly doubt it. The issue of lice can be problematic, has been problematic for persons of many different races. The solution shouldn't be to demonize the natural hair that grows out of a child's hair, but to teach the child how to care for his or her hair. At the kernel of this issue is our deeply entrenched discomfort with our blackness. It is quite sad that even in 2020, it is still an issue for us, straight out of Japan. Thank you, Alice, Olivia Carter. So that's why I want to invite everybody 3:30 p.m. on Saturday. We're going to address the issue of caring for the natural hair, both male and female. We're going to look at the products. We're going to look at the experiences, the science, and the religion, and everything behind it. So come on in, look. Please follow us on Heart to Heart. Look out for the flyer that's coming out. Look out for your invitation. Drop your email if you want your invitation personalized. Drop it in Zoom, drop it on Facebook, drop it on YouTube. Nadia, you're boiling up. To beat or
No,
not to beat is the
oh my
question.
goodness, it's just so easy. It's so easy. I know that you have mainly, I'm going to say, a Jamaican audience. All of us are probably born and bred in Jamaica. whether we've moved away or not, but our perspectives will be different. Mine is certainly different. So I believe that I was a very good student in school, was growing up in Jamaica, and I found that I was abused by teachers. Let's start with school. Um, in the class, you get probably 50 math problems to do in one sitting, which is crazy. If you get a certain number wrong, the teacher would beat you. Usually it's in your hand, but it's painful because they're using these big leather, rubbery type of belts. And some teachers even cut out rubbers from tires and all those things to beat kids because they don't achieve a certain level that the teacher expects. When I was going to high school, I was very rebellious when it comes on to beating. I was a good student, and the teachers acknowledge that. And I refuse to accept any beating from any teacher for anything that I didn't do. So, for example, as I mentioned earlier, the whole class is disruptive, or when I say whole class, majority, the teacher would decide that everybody gonna get licks. Now, Nadia was not taking any licks. And so there were issues because I would decide that I'm walking out, I'm going home. My parents would be very supportive because from that time, they were like, but why would you beat every child in the class when they're not all involved in the negative behavior? So right now, as an educator, all of that comes down to mismanagement, lack of understanding, poor management of the classroom. That's what that was. Come to today now, home beating. I was beaten by my parents. Just to make it very clear, my parents love me, love my siblings, world without end. It's not about them not loving why they beat. They beat because that's what was handed down from ancestors, their parents and parents' parents. That's what they got from slavery. It's very clear. Beating comes out of slavery. That's what was handed down, and that's still what is being used. Beating in any form, in the home, in the school, is unacceptable. It's abuse. There's no two way about it. Now, maybe to define, because some people may have a different definition of beating. For me, beating is repetitive hitting with an object or even your hand, a belt, a pan, and if you're born in Jamaica, when people who beat, they grab anything them catch and just
Broom,
beat,
back of the
right?
machete.
Everything that is abuse. Now, the Canadian Pediatric Society, they've done so much research into beating of children, and it's very clear that children who were beaten as in their childhood, they grow up to be, a lot of them become abusive and aggressive. A lot of the men beat wives, spouses. A lot of the women become aggressive. A lot of people who get beatings have anger that is inside of them and resentment towards their parents. When I became an adult and left my parents' house, I told them very clear. I said to them, do not beat any of my siblings who are younger than me. My mom, she was so grateful. She didn't beat anymore. And I explained to her, listen, you beat me, but if I wanted to be bad and broke out and do any, you could have stopped me. I'm smart enough. You could tell me, don't do this, don't go there. I could do it over and over and you would never know. Beating hurts kids mentally and physically. Think about it. When a parent takes a belt and beat a child, that leaves marks on the child. How is that? How is that discipline? How is that discipline? For me, I think in the Jamaican context, our generation, older generations, we need teaching. We need teaching about how to discipline children outside being physical. Because what we're telling children when we hit them, that's the way you sort out an issue. That's the way you teach, because our parents beat us because they want us to learn a lesson. So teaching and for us to learn, you have to hit. You have to hit. That's not true. And I have come to recognize that my thinking about this is true, because my own children, I don't beat my children, and I refuse to. My
Have
children,
you ever
I believe,
wanted to?
no, never, because the way I view it is nothing outside of abuse. It is abusive.
Maybe you need a rude child, Nadia.
No, but listen, from the first time, from being a toddler or even younger, you start to train your kids in how you want them. So for me, I have the eye. I inherited the eye look from my parents. That's another strategy, and a lot of Black people use the eyes.
But what is the I leading towards? Because normally when your mother gives you a warning stare or thing, it is like you're hedging against something. What are you hedging against? I'm hedging it against the fact that, hey, I can take you out of this world. It's not just a look. The look can't do anything. But what will follow?
No, it depends on the child, though. For some children, a look is okay, right? But again, in the Jamaican context, we have to learn how to take a child, sit them down, explain the behavior that is being exhibited, the consequences. Why do I want you not to continue doing this thing? Why is it detrimental? If we break in that habit, I mean, and a lot of people may think that is for a good no, it's a change in behavior. It's a change in the way we think as well. Because beating also is control. It's driving fear into children. It's manipulation. It's nothing about discipline. For example, when my parents started, interacting with my children, traveling, and seeing the way that we try to raise our children, my children would ask questions. So why are we not allowed to do? My mom, "Oh, you asking me why?" I have to explain to my mom, it is 100% okay for my children to ask me why. When they understand the why behind, you can't be on your phone X number of minutes, or you can't do this, you can't be watching TV, you can't go with your friends, we don't do sleepover, and I give the explanation, they're not going to come to me and keep asking me, or being challenging about it. It's all about teaching.
But you have
It's
that
all about,
patience, Nadia. Jamaican women don't have no patience. Take off your boot and give the boy one clap. Don't ask me no more question.
well,
How do
there
you get the
goes the
patience of
problem.
Job?
There goes
Huh?
the problem. We need teaching. Parents need teaching. My mom come to school, high school, and give me one box as a peanut wally. Why? Why? Because somebody told her that I have a boyfriend. Like, I didn't have no boyfriend, not no go so. But you know
Mhm.
how kids are. You talk to a boy, oh, you have a boyfriend. One box in the middle of school as a Pete. I was so vexed. I was so humiliated. And so as when I became an adult, I sat my mom down and I tell her, don't do it, because you will lose your children. In fact, there's a judge in the UK few years ago who brought her parents to court and sue them because of the trauma that she experienced out of the abuse that they levied against her. So if you love your children, you're going to find other ways to discipline them. I'm telling you, if we shift our mindset, it can work. Because if we say it can't work, and a lot of people say, oh, look at those kids in America, how disrespectful they are. Look at those
Mhm.
kids here. But don't be fooled. There are kids who are not being hit, and they are well adjusted, respectful, polite. It happens. But
Mhm.
we have to shift our mindset to recognize that there are alternatives to beating.
Yeah, I have Dixie Bell online. Very controversial position Nadia is taking tonight. No beating.
Okay.
Dixie Bell also is agreeing with you, Nadia. You have a little strength tonight. He's saying beating was done out of ignorance, where parents lacked communication skills. I have much to say on this subject, you know. I am not with Nadia full 100. Drewski, my brother says it's hard to break out of beating as a parent. Trust me, sometimes it seems to be the most viable option. Not just parents, but uncles, aunties, guardians. And but we're putting all of this on the parents. But Nadia, there are some pitney, some children that are just that, but some people are out there saying beating never, well, beating has killed some, but I mean generally beating not really killed some of us. I mean, a lot of bankers, a lot of intellectuals, prime ministers have been beaten. I have been
Yeah.
beaten, and
But
I
but
remember why I shouldn't do whatever I did before. So
no,
can it work
Anil,
for some?
the fear is what kept you from doing wrong. The
It's not no good.
fear.
Jude, in Jude,
No,
it says there are two ways to evangelize. One, pull the person out of the fire, right, by fear. Remember that in Jude? And two, it says, also, I'll find the scripture. But one can be love. You
but
can
but
win them
but
by
but
love, but two, out
back up.
of, but it doesn't matter how they got in the church, whether
No,
fear or love, as long as
but
they stay.
Anil, a
Yeah,
lot of people, they are not genuine. When people respond to fear,
yeah.
usually the effects are short term. They are tempted again to go back to it. How many children only get beaten one time and everything stop and them just be good picnic and everything done? Tell me.
We'd have to do some social surveys and a
A
deep
lot of kids
analysis.
get
And so,
beaten a lot. But Anil, what I want to try to communicate very clearly here,
yeah.
as a Jamaican born and bred,
Hmm.
I recognize that, and I'm going to say the overwhelming majority of Jamaican parents love to beat. It's an ingrained
Is it love? But it's just a reaction to the rudeness of the child, in
no,
that they don't
but
get up and say, "Hey, I feel like beating today."
no, it's a mindset. It's an inherited mindset out of slavery. They got it and they take it without no questioning, without no. Listen, I'm going to challenge you. Some
Hmm.
of the most affluent people within the Jamaican society, do they beat their children?
As I said, we'd have to do some social
No,
surveys.
but do
I
you
don't know.
think?
I don't know. I don't
I'm
know.
going to say, I
I
am going
saw
to
white
say,
people beating their babies on in a video recently. White people spank their children in the in
but
the in
wait,
the
but
southern part.
Anil,
Yeah.
we see when we say that people get beaten, I got beaten, and I could say you want to attribute your beating to what made you successful, or you have attempted to attribute beating to what has made other people very successful. I
Mm.
refute that. My success didn't come through beating, right? You, and I made it clear to my parents the beating was hurtful and I resented my parents. Well, not even my parents, my mom, because my dad just need to talk. But
Mm.
I resented it because I was a good child. I was very compliant. I wasn't doing any of the things that, I mean, my mom would even allow me to go, visit my friend next. And I understand the rationale. She had good reasons, but they were reasons that weren't thought out. They were things that she got from her parents, and she don't want me get pregnant early, so me can't go find a friend yard go. But come on now, listen. Relationship between children and their parents, open communication is the best way forward,
But
right? It's the
Nadia,
best way.
Jesus pulled out the whip.
No, but listen, Anil, we cannot if we're going to talk about this in a Christian context and we
Yes.
want to bring in the rod and all that, we can go
Oh
down that road.
Lord.
But if we're talking about it generally within the school context and within homes, how can I, as a parent, beat my children and they crying, scream, and I watch that and feel like when I'm done, I've achieved something? No, I'm a weakling. I'm talking to me. I am weak. I'm actually putting my frustration out in a negative way that will impact my child probably for the rest of their lives.
But
That's
hold
not
on.
the only way.
Nadia, you made a point. Yes, you're a good child. Miss Goody Two Shoes. We applaud you. But what about the rude child? I say many have confessed. I've seen many interviews, right? So I can say anecdotally that I've seen a great number of persons who have said that they were heading on a particular path. The the wake up call, that rod of correction, literally shifted them into a new direction. All right, so let me bring up the
The
scripture.
fear.
Let me
It's a
bring up the scripture.
fear.
Yes, but what's wrong with fear? Here
No,
is what
how
here
can
is
you
what
grow
Jude says.
children on fear?
Hold on, Jude says, of some have compassion. This is reference to the gospel, making a
Mm,
difference. Compassion, right? Love, lovey-dovey, the intense counseling, the psychosocial, the all of that stuff. But others save with fear, pulling them out of the fire. So this
mhm.
is now the preacher that will go down there to the community and say, God go and burn down like in burn down Sodom and Gomorrah, as opposed to the more
But there's no
Joyce
abuse
Meyer
there.
type. So the Lord loves you
There's
and
no
all.
abuse there. There's no abuse. Nobody is being
But
abused.
fear, no, we're working on the
Yeah,
premise
but
of fear.
okay, but listen, those people who come to know God, for example, when it was the year 2000, a lot of people run and get saved. A lot of them backslide. Some stayed. I find that when you do things out of fear, a lot of people are not genuinely, honestly making these decisions. They're doing it just to suit the situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing within church. A lot of people live in lies upon lies upon lies. You live a certain way just because you're fearful to come
Mm-hmm.
out, to be
Mm-hmm.
really you and to show what's in your heart. But after a while, the authentic you will get out. The
Mm-hmm.
truth about you will get out. Now, for me, to watch somebody beat a child, leaving marks, and it's not only the physical marks, it's the mental trauma that is caused. And a lot of these people, uh, even these kids going to school, they're having issues with friends. The first thing they think about hitting. Why? Because it's the mindset. It's what has been passed on. Beating, hitting is the answer. That's how you correct situations. That's how you discipline. And so their children, you know, get take on the same type of strategy to deal with their children. I resented beating so much that I told myself I am not beating my kids. Mind you, I'm not saying a slap, because a slap to me is not the same as beating. So just to be
Okay, because I
clear,
see somebody asking, is there a difference between beating and spanking? So you're just saying the
a
modality of it.
slap is different from beating.
So is a slap spanking?
Well, it depends on the person's definition. Once it
No man,
involves
you.
the
I'm asking for your.
repetitive,
Yeah.
okay, so once it involves the repetitive hitting with an object, leaving mark on the child's skin,
Yeah.
over a long period of time, or it's short and intense, that's a beating. If I am going to give a child to slap on their bum or on their hand or whatever, I'm not leaving a mark. I'm not hurting the child. They're not screaming because they're being abused. That's different.
So you're
I
saying
have a
two.
question.
Are you being literal with the two? Or are you just. Because we want to be very
It
specific.
cannot be, and that's it. That's down to judgment. That's
Oh.
down to judgment. And a lot
But
of
the
them,
judgment is based on the reaction of the child, the badness of the child. So if it's a very rude child and
this
I
is
give him
why.
10 good lick, am I not just spanking as
But
opposed to
watch this, Anil. A lot of Jamaican parents even beat you more when you don't cry. I'm telling you, this mentality is slavery. You know that I'm telling the truth. If you don't cry, you get more liquor, you're rude. Oh, so you want to beat me and I cry. You're bad. Did you
Aldine wants to
idea?
jump in? Jump
No,
in, Aldine.
I'm all for no beating, but something just came to mind. So you're saying your definition
Yes.
or your concept of beating is that it will leave a physical mark if it's repetitive. But then you have some of those kind of physical or corporal punishment that is not as drastic. It might not leave a physical mark, but it leaves a mental stain, as you would have
Mm-hmm,
alluded.
mm-hmm,
So, for example, I remember in primary school, I used to get a lot of pinching. A lot of teachers,
Love
deviate from
pinches.
the beating because they know they can't physically like use something to hit the child. So they do a lot of pinching and just heavy hitting on the shoulder, boy, you're crazy or something like that. So I'm thinking, because why I'm saying this is because I haven't hit my daughter and I will never do so. I'm tempted to. But what I realized, when her grandmother was here, her grandmother would spank her. But what I realize is that it's not just that she's not leaving any physical mark, but I realized where my daughter got really aggressive. So the tantrums, plus the fact that she's been exposed to, the first thing that you do is to hit somebody or pinch somebody, or that's her reaction, and she is frustrated because that's what she sees her grandma doing. So I think we have to also look at not just the physical marks that are left, but the emotional, the aggression that comes out of these different forms. It's on a spectrum, different forms of physical abuse or physical punishment.
Right.
Yeah.
Basically.
Interesting. Thank you,
Agreed.
Aldine. CAEM wants to weigh in. CAEM. Who is that?
Hello, everybody. I'm just coming from a personal
Straight out of
perspective.
London. Carol.
Yeah.
Auntie Carol. Welcome in.
All right. I said, no. I think everything has to be taken in context. If a child is, when spoken to one or two or three occasions, that child shows corrective behavior, there's absolutely no need for beating or slapping or anything like that. However, if a child, especially if it's an older child who should be able to understand and reason well with, if that child constantly overstep the mark, the limitations in the house, so to speak. Let me backtrack a bit. I agree with Pastor Jeremy that the beating should be, or the slapping or whatever you call it, should be for parental correction. I don't think a stranger or a teacher should just go and just beat and slap any child like that, right? So I think for the parents who have guidelines in the house and the rules of the house, how they want to bring up their children. And I'm talking about parents with good mental capacity here. I'm not talking about people who are just mentally ill in quotation and just taking out their frustrations in the child. I'm talking about somebody who is well-thinking, a person who are able to make judgments according to how they want to grow up their child. I think if this child is constantly disobedient, constantly disregarding the rules of the house, they need to be disciplined in accordance with the Bible. And
sorry, I'm going to interject. Can you expound on that, please?
Please don't. We heard you a lot. No, please don't. Let me explain. Yes.
Okay.
Don't interrupt. Yes. So I'm saying that if the child has been spoken to on several occasions and said these are the rules, and they constantly say, I'm not going to obey the rules, I'm going to overstep the mark all the time. If you give one slap, it doesn't work. I think it needs more than one slap. And if that still doesn't work, then they have other stringent whatever the parents decide, other stringent restrictions on them. Because I'm not saying it's just to be the slapping alone, but the rules should be there, and there should be consequences if they are not obeyed. Because otherwise, what will happen, and what you see in the UK and other places, is that they end up in jail. And when they end up in jail, the other prisoners treat them worse, and plus the prison wardens treat them much worse. Even the police will treat them much worse. So in love for the child, I think the parents who love them so much, and again, I reiterate that parents with good mental capacity treats them by treating them in quotation, or manage them in such a way that they know what rules and what rules should be broken, what rules cannot be broken, and what rules can be discussed. Because not everything can be discussed with a child saying, why? If you are a child, there are certain things you can say, okay, you can't do this because of so and so. But not every parent have a time to go and sit down with a child who asks why constantly. No, that's rude, some of them. Very rude. I've seen it so many times. I'm not a parent myself, but I've seen it so many times. They're just asking why? And you explain once and you explain twice, and they're still coming to ask why. It's just outright rude, and they need to be disciplined before later on in society, whether it's at work or in the community, they get further discipline, which is much more harsh.
Okay.
That's my comment.
Thank you, Lady Mullins. Before Nadia, who is boiling up, wants to respond, let me just remind everyone that we're discussing now in the second part of Heart to Heart. We have about 10-20 minutes left. We're discussing to beat or not to beat. This is in the context of a recent news report in the Gleaner that quoted Acting Chief Education Officer Dr. Kassan Troop, who she called for parents to exercise restraint in disciplining their children because of the risk of damage to their personhood. She grew up in the inner city, and she mentioned that she was abused. She got some good licks, as most of us did. And as a mother, she struggled to not exercise and not replicate what she experienced as a child, and her husband had to help her with that. And it's mentioned in the article in the Gleaner that the country's allowance of child beating has often been cited as a breach of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, to which Jamaica is a signatory. We're having some comments here coming in on social media. I see some comments heating up right here. My brother Drewski says it's very hard for a parent, especially predominantly black, to not beat or physically reprimand a child. I do not agree that it's, however, only fair that gets the child to behave or sometimes pull up their socks. Neither do I agree that beating is entirely abuse. I've seen that even in the armed uniformed services as used as a type of discipline that can be rough, but it's not to kill them, Nadia. It's not abuse. It's just discipline. Helps them to stay in line. I see also Nicole jumping in with scripture for you, Nadia. Nadia has an interesting take on the scripture, the Bible. Does the Bible justify? Talk to us, Nadia.
So Proverbs 13, verse 24. He that spareth his rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes. And then Psalms 23, verse 4. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. I want to emphasize comfort. A lot of people, and I'm going to respond directly to, is it Coral from the UK?
Yes, Carolyn
Okay.
Mullins.
I really wanted clarification because she mentioned the Bible. And this is a long-held misunderstanding. I'm going to ask everybody who is listening in to look at Psalms 23, verse 4, in your own time perhaps, and also Proverbs 13, 24. The rod is not necessarily an instrument to beat. The rod is not necessarily an instrument for beating. You can take time and go and look at the Hebrew word for rod, and you will find at least 3 meanings. And one of them that jumped out within context of this conversation is shepherding, used in the process of shepherding. Parents are shepherds for our children. In Proverbs 13, 24, it's interesting, in Psalms 23, verse 4, it talks about the rod also being comfort. Every time we talk about this rod and beating, it's giving the wrong understanding of what the scripture is talking about. The Bible does not say you should beat your children. All right. So you can spend some time in that and looking at the verse, because if the rod comforts, I have a problem with us thinking the rod is only for beating. The other thing I want to point out is discipline is not a synonym for beating. Discipline is not a synonym for beating. When we say discipline in the Jamaican context, a lot of us are talking about beating. Beating doesn't mean discipline. We need to face up to it. We have been handed something by our foreparents that derived from slavery, and it's lingering and it's damaging. I have lived in the UK, Coral, for nearly 16 years. My children were born in the UK, at least 3 of them were born there. I taught in the system for more than 14 years. I interacted with a lot of children, whether it's in church, in schools, in my communities. Not all children in foreign country bad getting and misbehave and whatever. There are children who are well adjusted, positive contributors to their, their spaces that they occupy, well respectful to their parents, and them don't get those beatings. There's a misconception that a child has to be beaten to become disciplined and polite, or that children should get beaten because it is what aligns them to become decent young people or, well behaved. That's not true. I'm a testament, my own children. I don't need to beat my children. What we also don't look at within, and I'm sticking within the Jamaican context, abuse is not only physical, the trauma that is left to know that your parent beat you. And if we're going to be really honest in here, in this talk tonight, a lot of Jamaican parents, when we say beat, we mean murder. The amount of lick that they give you when you're done, sometimes you pee yourself. Come on
Oh
now,
boy.
because I'm telling it as it is. The way when you finish, you have cuts all over you. A lot of Jamaican parents beat hard. So let's get it. We can't sit here, even if it's a slightest, level of beating, whatever we want to put. It's still abusive because it leaves a very negative mark on the child's mind. Do you know that a lot of children who are abused grow up? And this is, if we want to interact with the research, it's out there, right? And what I can't understand is that when you are in Jamaica, the single story is a problem. The single story is a problem. Within the Jamaican context, without leaving Jamaica and going other places and seeing that there are children who don't get beaten, but are decent children, just like the ones they find in Jamaica, we get wally palik. We have this one idea that it has to take beating to discipline our children for them to become, what we want them to be. It's not true. It's a lie that has been handed down to us. And it's control over children with fear. It's control over children with fear. I strongly suggest, even for those who are on the line who don't have children yet, the earlier you start to communicate with your children, your expectations, and to be open and to praise them for the good things that they're doing and celebrating what what they do positively, it's the best outcome you have. Beating doesn't have to be an option at all. It doesn't have to be an option.
Controversial comments from Nadia. Nemard Hunt, educator, experienced educator, globe trotter, parent, mother, minister. Um, the parents are riling up now. So, if Nadia, you want my pitney? Drewski continues to say, I can't really see a teacher beating a student. We should leave that to the parents. But if the child spend most of the productive day and the formative day, because I believe we change in the day more than in the night, because in the night we're sleeping, but in the day, I mean, our values are being affected, our personality is being shaped. This is the best of our time. It's the teachers who are left with the burden of the badness and the rudeness, right? So the teachers' hands are tied. They can't do anything with the children. They talk, they talk, they talk, they talk. Nothing happen. The boy back out knife to fight. Some of these inner city areas, even uptown, rudeness, and stuff. So people are asking for viable alternatives. The minister is saying intense counseling. Nadia is saying conversations. But what if you talk, Nadia, and nothing
Okay,
happen?
let me be real, right?
Yeah.
There are some of the roughest schools in Detroit. I have a friend who is a principal in Detroit. She left teaching international and decided, she was intentional about the fact that, you know what, I'm going into the slums of Detroit and that's where I'm going to end my career. And she's a principal there. This is probably one of the roughest places to be teaching or to be an administrator in the US. However, you have some of the most amazing stories. It comes to mindset. I'm not suggesting that every single child is going to respond to coaching, counseling, therapy. And I 100% agree with that minister from Jamaica, 100. It's so refreshing to hear that coming out of Jamaica, honestly. But There are so many alternatives in schools. Here and in England, we have either they call it assistant teacher or support teacher, whatever. There needs to be better infrastructure, better resources in the schools in Jamaica. So you can pull kids from class. They can have one-to-one sessions with people who are trained professionals to deal with, de-escalate issues and so forth. Counseling, behavior therapy. Here in Canada, we have all those resources. You have small classes just for students who have specific behavioral needs. The teacher doesn't need to be the one stressing. The teacher is not a behavior therapist. The teacher has a responsibility to manage the classroom environment and make sure it's conducive to learning. However, there are certain things beyond the teacher's expertise, which the government of Jamaica needs to look at and provide that resource for teachers. So I acknowledge that teachers in Jamaica are stretched way beyond,
Yeah.
but a teacher with a growth mindset, a teacher with the perception that every child, regardless of where their starting point is, it no matter which ghetto them come out of, there's a possibility that they can be better. It takes a teacher with that sort of mindset to turn around those sort of classrooms into ones where most of the kids, if not all, progress. That's happening in schools in the US in some of the roughest areas, even here in Canada in some of the roughest areas. But again, the resources are there. So it goes back to the Ministry of Education. I know they're doing wonderful things. I know Dr. Tanisha Ingleton, she's doing some amazing stuff in training principals and vice principals and so forth. That's great. It's a great start. But we need to recognize that any child can learn. It doesn't matter how rough they are, you will need to understand where they're coming from. Some of these kids are coming to school out of trauma. Some of them witness murders. Some of them see gun every day. Some of them, experience prostitution. Some of them involved in prostitution. Some of them are gunmen. All of those things, some of these kids are exposed to. So the teacher now has to have a mindset and be cognizant of the fact that, you know what, some of these kids are coming to me as the only hope. What am I going to be? How am I going to respond to their, behaviors in the classroom? Am I going to be dogmatic, or am I going to seek for support where it's available and try to come out of a growth and a positive mindset to help these kids? What I refuse to accept is that there's no alternative. That's my
Yeah.
position.
Yeah. Yeah.
I refuse to accept beating has to be an option. That to me is the biggest lie that has
Well,
been left from slavery.
that's how we're ending on that note, and you're backed up by Crystal Wallace online, who says, I don't beat my daughter, and I don't have to. If she's misbehaving, she's in Jamaica. I tell her she's being naughty. You're being naughty. And we talk about what she did to make me say she is naughty. God bless you, Crystal. You are among the top 3%. Janique says some children have underlying conditions that makes
Yes.
it difficult for them to comply. Example, conduct disorder. So you would beat the child till thy kingdom come. You won't change.
Mm-hmm.
Counseling will help, and I think I agree with you, Nadia, and it's something on my heart for many years that hurting people hurt others,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the behaviors we see the child carrying out is things they have learned, patterns they have
Right.
learned in the home, and we need to examine that. In fact, I want to take up this challenge. I never back down from challenges, and almost all of my programs are segues into others, just organically developing. So we are going to be doing a series on domestic abuse
Mm-hmm.
and violence against women, and also in the minority men. Some men are getting abused emotionally and otherwise. But we want to look predominantly at domestic abuse. In Jamaica, we have the whole murder suicide that's sweeping the nation for years. So we want to take on that challenge and look at that. So I want to thank you, Nadia. I know you just came to just give a little comment and run. But we know this is your passion, your ear. I want to thank all the guests who came on. Alicia, Dunkley Willis, Pastor Jeremy McGregor. I want to thank Drewski. Drewski, you jump on? No, my brother.
Late.
As we are wrapping up, I want to thank everybody that made a comment, participated, um, and we have some work to do. So, parents and those who are going to have children, as my bishop said, make sure before you even do that act, yes, to get the child, make sure that you pray and consecrate and declare stuff over the child's life
And
so
Neil,
that
I'm
they
curious, maybe in the chat, I'm just curious to see if people believe in beating or not. Yes or no?
Oh, we can
Absolutely.
do a poll. Let me do.
Yeah.
Let me launch a poll, folks. Online, those are online. We're launching the poll. You can't see it, but you can type in whatever you're in the chat. Type whether you believe in corporal punishment or beating. Let me just put it plainly. Um, type whether you believe yes, we should beat, no, we should not beat, or maybe or something, wherever your position is. Begin to type no. Um, should beating, let me type the question, should beating be allowed in schools or just generally?
Generally.
Okay, let me just say, should children be beaten? Be beaten for disciplinary. Um, so some of the creative things I know Americans do, they put them in a corner. We call that timeout. They take away candy, games,
Naughty corner.
playtime. Oh, who's saying something? Drewski?
No,
What
I
are
was
some of the
just
stuff?
saying naughty corner.
Okay, Drewski, what they do in New York over there with the American children?
New York is a rough place, We are talk about another state. New York
No,
is
I
crazy.
want to hear. I want to hear what's happening
Because
over New York.
real quickly, there's a viral video right now about a guy who beat his kids, right? Like
Yeah,
he's Caucasian, right?
yeah.
Everybody's making a big deal out of it. That's why. So people do beat kids over here. People do beat kids over here in New York, and they beat them the Jamaican way, the Caribbean way, the Hispanic way,
No,
the Indian way.
It's rare for Caucasians to beat their child like the way that guy did.
Oh, that's your wife? Let me hear that
It's
accent.
rare.
Come,
Oh,
bring her
she's a
near to the
teacher
phone.
too, you know.
Bring her to the phone, Mrs. Morrison,
She's a teacher, so she can talk. Go ahead.
Mrs. Drewski.
Good night. How are you?
Bless you, bless you.
He's roping me in. But
Yes.
I was talking about the video that went viral
Mhm.
with this Caucasian guy,
Oh yes, I saw it.
and he spanked his son and reprimanded his daughter. And I didn't see anything wrong with it, but some people were alarmed because it brought back flashbacks to when they were children
Mhm.
and the trauma that it left on them. However, I don't think there was anything particularly wrong with it. He gave them a few claps. And because he's a man, I think his hands were a little bit heavier. And because it's rare that Caucasians beat their kids, it was even more alarming. So society is not used to seeing Caucasians beating their kids the way that guy did. That guy beat his kid like he was black, like how we used to get beaten.
Mhm.
Now
Slapped him on the bam bam.
slapped him on the bam bam, and he's sat there, and the daughter knew she would have been next.
Right. But Nadia,
But
And
can
it
I
Fear
could
of
just
have put
say,
God,
them
they
in
there. The
line.
fear of God.
no,
And it
can I
put them,
just say,
but hold on. But look at the response.
Yeah.
Normally we will see, like in a grocery store, the typical scenario, a parent, a Caucasian parent trying to talk to their kid, and they get a temper tantrum and they throw themselves on the ground. Now look at that compared to what this guy did. He gave them a couple claps, and that boy sat down there, and the girl knew to not even make a peep. There goes the difference. Do we want kids to get temper tantrums and act out in
Nadia
public?
Nadia advocates for spanking. She doesn't advocate for beating, which is, she said, repetitive, leaving marks, aggressive and over the top.
No, I
He's
don't. I
saying
don't. I
She's
don't
saying
believe
the
in
spanking.
breaking the skin.
Yeah.
Don't break the skin. There's no need for your children to be going to school with cuts and bruises, because as a teacher, I have to report that, and I don't have I'm not obligated to tell you that I'm reporting it. If I see that your child is coming in with cuts and bruises, I have a right to go to the proper authorities and say, listen, I believe this child is being abused. Mm-hmm. That means you're beating your children too hard. Right. There's no need for you to break skin, come to school, for the child to go to school with lumps and cocos and all that stuff.
Well, the poll. Yes, go ahead.
To add, and I forgot to say that I want us to know we are mainly, from my perspective, from what I can see, Black people here. A lot of times, I'm telling you, you have been saved because of Black teachers within schools. Black teachers or Black administrators. I'm telling you that a lot of times when Black parents beat their kids and send them to school and they have marks or they confide in teachers, I'm just going to say we have a legal obligation. And personally, I'm talking about me. If I have a student in my class that confides in me that they have been beaten, and if I can see any or I can see any physical evidence, I'm reporting it. I'm not going to say this is because this is the community and this is the way we do things. No.
And you have to.
And I have to, else I will lose my job.
Yes,
but
you will.
Only that, it's not okay. But I know that there are some Black teachers who will say, you know what, this is the way Black communities, deal with their children. But no, it's not okay. It's not okay.
It's not okay.
Well, the results are in on Zoom. Let me share the poll results. You can see for yourself. Not everybody voted.
Close.
Not sure why everybody didn't vote.
Maybe
we have 18 participants. I think only 9 persons voted, but 40% says yes, should be whopped. 30% says no, and 30% says maybe. So yes, it's pretty close, Mrs. Morrison and Nadia. So Nadia, we have a whole re-education process to do. But I don't agree with you, Nadia, though, about the slavery and beating, because white folks in the southern United States do spank a lot and beat a lot.
Yeah, but it's still slavery. They're in the South. What was down there?
But they're beating their own white kind. They're not beating blacks.
True, but the culture of that was there. That's something that is very much common in that area. But Anil, as time progresses, we are going to realize that even in the Jamaican context, and I wish there was I bet you if you had injected some people from different cultures within this conversation, you would not have the same outcome.
No, I would more tend to believe that it's more biblically based, because the southern district is more biblical based. That's a Bible Belt of America. So I think a predominant reason why people still beat is because of the interpretation of Proverbs. But as you have said, we need to appropriate another mean according to Nadia. We're not saying that's how it is, but Nadia's perspective is that we need to reconsider the term rod, how it's consistently used in the Bible. Is it a literal rod, or is it speaking of shepherding, guiding the child into another path?
And even so, Anil, even think about the attributes of Christ and his nature.
The Christ that turned over the table with the whip.
The same one. But when I look at God, when I think about the Christ, I think more of his nature of compassion and love. Even the turning over of the table was even that was out of love. I
No.
don't think,
Yeah, he was love, but him did angry, cross,
yeah, but
he
I'm
never
not
miserable,
saying we
but
can't be
angry and
angry.
cross.
The Bible tells us we can, but the Bible tells us that we can be angry. But I refuse to believe that the Bible is telling us that we should repetitively hit our children,
All right.
breaking their
What
skin.
if I write I love
No,
you on the whip?
whatever.
All right, John 3:16 on it.
No, no.
There are some parents who name this their instrument of punishment, in biblical terms. But neither you cannot deny the evidence. Quite a few successful persons have come up said they have been through this and they haven't died. They have been made better. They were redirected in another way. To us, what we call abuse, to some was necessity.
But do you
But
know that
Even this
our
conversation
parents,
is traumatic.
our parents now, I'm sorry, our parents now, well, my parents now, they're very soft on my nieces, right?
Mhm.
And they're saying, if they knew better, they would have done better.
Yes.
So I believe that as the generations
Mhm.
progress, we should move further away from that type of traumatic reprimanding.
But I don't agree with that though. And
Absolutely.
I didn't speak on this really, but I'm disagreeing with my wife. Nadia, a long time.
I hope you have a space that you made tonight, Drewski.
Hope she have a space. Anyways, I disagree because not every kind of reprimand, physical reprimand is I believe damaging. Neither do I believe
damaging ones.
But I mean, that's wrong. That's from it's damaging. It's definitely wrong. But I don't believe that a repetitive spank or a repetitive slap, because parents don't slap children just one time. Sometimes, let's be real about that. Repetitively, I don't think that's abuse. I don't think that's crazy. I just think that everything is done in moderation, as Jeremy said earlier, because I believe children should get that type of
Babe, but that's what
correction.
I'm saying. I'm saying that's what my parents are apologizing for now.
They can't apologize for everything.
No, they're apologizing now because they realized that they were a little too heavy.
Okay.
They didn't just hit to say, okay, just stop. They were hitting like you're gonna have to swallow your snot,
Yep.
and you're gonna have whales
Yeah.
and
I'll
stuff like
take you out
that.
of this world. I brought you in.
Right. They were treated rough. My mother used to tell me she got beaten for laughing.
Mhm.
If she
For
if she skin
laughing.
if she skinned
Yes.
her teeth
Hmm.
too hard, what are you laughing for?
Yeah.
And
Oh.
I don't know. I didn't grow up in Jamaica, so I don't know how rough the lifestyle was. Why my mom would get beaten for laughing. But that's the traumatic story that she tells us till this day.
Hi. Andrew's
That
wife.
left her.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Listen, I can tell you, and I'm gonna be straight up honest. In Jamaica, you get licked even before you do the thing. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
In my experience, there are some parents who will hit you if they think you are going to do the thing, to
Right.
put you off doing it. The thing about skinning your teeth, your mom is telling the truth. In Jamaica, and I think even now in some places, they say like girls shouldn't laugh too much. You laugh too much, you're acting too easy for
Giddy.
men to,
Yeah.
think they can get their way. It's stupidity, not gussa.
I
Listen,
think you're robbing the child of their childhood when you do
right?
that. Children are lighthearted and they like to laugh. And I mean, they're going to do silly things. The Bible speaks about the heart of a child. And
Mhm.
if you spare the rod and spoil the child and blah blah blah, you're not beating wisdom out of them. But I think if you direct them, you speak to them, you show
Right.
them. Like for instance, I often think to myself, okay, when it comes to the um, thing of don't touch the fire, it's hot. You don't have to beat me to tell me don't touch the fire. If you take me to the fire, you can tell me, okay, it's hot.
Okay. I think we lost that connection from New York. Um, yeah, very interesting
Um,
point,
Sister,
Morrison. Okay, okay. Hopefully they come back before we go. We have 5 minutes. Go ahead, Aldine.
I think is it Nadia? I think Sister Nadia is fighting. I get your point, but I think it's a fight against culture.
It is.
It's a fight against what has been proven to work, and so it's going to be divided along the lines of age and experience. And I think what your research has shown and the effects, which are not always physically like physical abuse but emotional. I think the generation to come and a part of the present generation, parents who are coming up, I think they are going to be more receptive to what you're saying, but
Right.
you'll not find someone who is in their 60s or 70s who had beaten their children and have seen where their children have become doctors and lawyers. But I think if some of these children should come and have a conversation with their parents and say, "Mommy, when you beat me at school, I was embarrassed. It was humiliating." Yeah. Why they have the success, there's the emotional trauma, and that's why I have a lot of men. That's how they react to women, and that's so it might not be the machete and the hose and all of those things, but some men believe that a woman deserves a slap on their mouth or a slap sometimes to be quiet, and
And
that is
some
where
women
this are
like it.
stemming from. That's
Some
where it is
women like
stemming
it,
from.
Aldine.
Some women, it doesn't matter, but it has repercussions, emotional, physical, psychological. It affects, and that's
Yeah.
the bottom line.
That's
And
why I
that's
need to do that
100%.
session. Yes, go
Yes,
ahead, Dave.
Aldine, I saw that's exactly my point. Because my own mom, when I sat down with her, and this has been 20 something years ago, and I sat her down and I explained to her, "Mom, listen, you have good children. We are obedient. We won't do these things that you're thinking. We want you to trust us." And I explained to her that when you beat me, it didn't stop me from going to a boyfriend if I wanted. It couldn't stop me. It didn't stop me from stealing away from school. That idea that beating was the thing that prevented your children from becoming the worst is not necessarily true. And my mom was very receptive. In fact, she told me in later years she felt embarrassed because she's thinking the beating is working and helping us to be this way. But really, I'm saying to her, not really. And so moving forward, my siblings did not get those beating at all. And they turn out quite fine. So the idea that beating is synonymous with success and progress no, it doesn't. That's not it's just our way of thinking. We have to relearn. And I think, in closing, it's really going to start with teaching, educating parents, have parenting classes. What are the alternatives? How can I discipline my very indisciplined child? How can I start to change the way I look at discipline, move away from the beating, forget that is an option. What
Yeah.
else is at my disposal?
Yes. And finally, Crystal again says, my mother used to hit me for no reason. When I became an adult, I asked her why she used to hit me so much and so hard. She said she was frustrated and she took out her frustration on me.
Yeah.
We have to end tonight. If we don't end, we just go until midnight. When we started, I thought nobody was coming on because these issues are not, of importance to anyone. But I'm glad that the crowd turned out and that online there are many comments. Many persons have just joined, but we have to go. So sorry the Morrisons couldn't finish their point, but we'll reconnect with them in a follow-up session. As I said, I'm going to do sessions on domestic or a session on domestic abuse. I want to bring on people who have been really abused in marriage or in life, and we bring on a counselor and we have the healing that must begin to break that cycle. So, Lady Minister Hunt, do you want to pray for us as we go?
Sure,
In
no
Jesus' name.
problem. Father, we want to thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your mercies towards us. Lord, we thank you for this opportunity that we had to come together and to have dialogue about these important issues. Lord, as we try to raise our children, those who try to raise their grandchildren, Father, I pray that you will give us the wisdom and the understanding. Help us to understand even your word as we use it to direct the things that we do. Father, I pray for every parent who feels there is no alternative, who may feel frustrated, who may lack the understanding, the support, the resources to find alternative ways of disciplining their children. Father, I pray that you too, you can speak to them, you can give them direction, you can help them in managing the behaviors of their children in different ways. Father, I even pray for the children who are suffering from trauma, those who have been affected by constant beating. Lord, I pray that you too, God, as you've done in so many other situations, will help them to understand and to overcome. Father, tonight I pray for Anil. God, I pray that you will continue to guide him. I pray that you'll continue to direct him, Father, as he engages us in all these really important conversations that are not only important in the world, but in the kingdom. Father, I pray that you will continue to guide his footstep and give him wisdom. Father, bless every person on the line, every person that is watching. Help us, God, to further understand. Give us further understanding in these issues. We thank you in Jesus' name.
In
Amen.
Jesus' name. Thank you, Minister Hunt. If you have been impacted positively by the program tonight, just type an encouraging word in the Zoom or open up the lines and let Lady Nadia hear as a parent, future parent, some of you, guardian, auntie, let her know that you have been impacted and that you will stop beat and start teach more and communicate more, connect more. If you have been impacted, just leave a positive note. I'm seeing some notes. Crystal Wallace Green saying amen. Um, Janique Palmer saying thank you, Nadia. She really enjoyed the program. Um, well, happy birthday, Elder Michael Samuels. Okay, sir, I understand. It's his birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Um, so God bless you, everyone online. I'm going to end the stream now.